In the beginning, before the fields of Europe were etched with the furrows of human hands, before agriculture was even a memory in the mind of civilization, the wild ancestors of cabbage grew quietly along the salt-kissed coasts of the Atlantic. They were not yet the heads of tightly folded green leaves that we know today, but rather loose clusters of hardy, thick foliage clinging to the rocky cliffs of Western Europe. These plants, resilient and strong, braved wind and salt and shifting tides. Survivors of a world in flux, nature had already written into them a code of endurance, of transformation, and of subtle power. It was this wild brassica, born of stone and sea, that would one day journey with humankind across millennia, reshaped by culture, faith, famine, and survival, until it stood at the center of our tables, humble, nourishing, and immortal. Long before the word cabbage was ever spoken, the people of ancient Europe gathered these wild greens for their sustenance. In the damp soil of the Neolithic era, where early farmers began to shape the landscape with their first tools, wild cabbage became one of the earliest cultivated vegetables. Along the chalky cliffs of Britain, along the Mediterranean sunlit shores, the plant adapted, thickening its leaves to resist heat, curling inward to protect its heart. What began as a simple plant of survival slowly transformed through human hands into a symbol of nourishment and protection, a living echo of the land itself. The ancient Greeks knew of this plant. They called it crambe. The philosopher Theophrastus wrote of its varieties, noting its hardiness, its ability to thrive where others failed. Hippocrates, father of medicine, praised it for its power to heal the body and balance the humours. Cabbage leaves were steeped in wine, pressed against wounds, or eaten as a remedy for excess. For in the Greek mind, cabbage was both food and medicine, a gift from the earth that carried the wisdom of moderation. Greek mythology even wrapped its origin in divine myth. It was said that cabbage sprang from the tears of Lycurgus, a Thracian king who defied the god Dionysus. From grief and punishment, from tears and soil, the plant emerged, a story that carried the faint scent of truth. For cabbage would forever be tied to human endurance, to sorrow transformed into life. When Rome rose from the Mediterranean, its armies and farmers carried the seeds of the Greeks' wisdom, and with them, the love of cabbage deepened. The Romans adored it. They called it Brassica oleracea. And from the writings of Cato the Elder and Pliny the Elder, we know how deeply entwined it was with Roman life. Cato wrote passionately of its virtues, declaring it superior to all other vegetables, capable of cleansing the body, curing illness, and maintaining strength. Roman banquets might end in excess, but the wise would begin with cabbage, for it was believed to prevent drunkenness, to purify the blood before wine could cloud the mind. Soldiers ate it before battle. Farmers grew it in every patch of fertile soil. The Roman Empire, vast and hungry, spread cabbage across Europe, from the sunlit fields of Italy to the misty coasts of Gaul and Britannia. Everywhere it went, it took root, adapting, transforming, a shapeshifter plant echoing the empire that bore it. In the centuries that followed Rome's fall, Europe descended into shadows. Yet the cabbage endured. In the monasteries of the Middle Ages, monks tended gardens as acts of devotion, preserving ancient knowledge as the world outside grew uncertain. Among the medicinal herbs and healing flowers, cabbage grew in abundance. Its presence was not only practical but spiritual. It was the green flame of survival through hardship. While kingdoms fell and new faiths rose, the humble cabbage sustained the poor, the pilgrim, and the soldier. It required little, endured much, and gave generously. In this way, it became a quiet emblem of medieval resilience. Across Europe, cabbage evolved into countless forms. In the colder regions of the north, its heads grew tighter and denser, curling inwards like fists against the chill. In the warmer Mediterranean lands, loose-leaf cabbages thrived in open fields, their colours deepening under the sun. The diversity of the plant mirrored the diversity of Europe itself. From the red cabbages of Germany to the Savoy types of Italy, from the smooth greens of France to the rugged forms of Scandinavia. Each region, each culture left its mark upon the plant, and in return, cabbage fed them all. By the late Middle Ages, cabbage was no longer merely sustenance. It was a staple, a symbol of the people's bond with the soil. Artists painted it in the margins of illuminated manuscripts. Peasants stored it through the long winters. Preserved in barrels of salt and brine, the birth of what we now know as sauerkraut. This simple method of fermentation, likely learned from distant eastern lands, allowed people to carry the essence of summer into the dark months of scarcity. It was a triumph of patience and resourcefulness, a human dialogue with nature. And cabbage was at the heart of it. In the East, too, cabbage found its own destiny. Long before it became known in Western Europe, wild brassicas had been cultivated in China and Korea, where they evolved along separate but parallel paths. In ancient China, leafy cabbages were prized for their ability to cool the body and balance the spirit. In Korea, the art of fermentation reached poetic heights with kimchi, a living, breathing food of transformation, born from cabbage, salt, and thyme. Just as Europe found its resilience in sauerkraut, Asia found its vitality in kimchi, and across thousands of miles, these cultures shared an unspoken kinship. Both preserved cabbage not just as food, but as philosophy, a conversation between life and endurance. As the Renaissance dawned and Europe began to look outward again, cabbage travelled with explorers and settlers. When ships set sail toward the New World, they carried barrels of salted cabbage to sustain sailors on the long voyages. It was a matter of survival. Cabbage's vitamin C prevented scurvy, the sailor's silent killer. Long before science could explain why, the plant had already proven its power to save lives. On the decks of wooden ships crossing vast oceans, the green scent of fermented cabbage meant hope, a connection to land, to life, to home. In the New World, cabbage found new soils and new meanings. Immigrants brought their seeds, their recipes, and their memories. In America, cabbage became both immigrant and native, adapting again, as it always had, to the hands that cared for it. The Irish boiled it with potatoes, the Germans fermented it into kraut, the Eastern Europeans wrapped it around meat and rice, creating dishes that carried the flavours of their homelands into a new era. In the gardens of colonists and pioneers, cabbage thrived beside corn and beans, a quiet symbol of endurance in a land that demanded resilience. By the 18th and 19th centuries, cabbage had become an emblem of the working class. It was cheap, filling, and full of sustenance. In cities of the industrial age, where smoke darkened the skies and poverty weighed heavily on the people, cabbage was a comfort food, a meal of survival that warmed cold nights. It was boiled in tenements, stewed in soldiers' camps, and sold in markets for pennies. Yet even in this simplicity, it carried dignity. Cabbage had been the food of emperors and monks, of peasants and sailors, a democratic vegetable that belonged to everyone. Artists and writers of the age noticed its quiet power. Vincent van Gogh painted cabbages in his still lifes, their green leaves rendered with reverence. Russian writers mentioned it as the food of the soul, humble but essential. In folklore, cabbage symbolized luck and fertility. In some places, newborns were said to come from cabbage patches, a poetic echo of life emerging from the earth. The plant had become more than food. It was mythology reborn in every generation. As the world entered the modern era, science finally caught up with tradition. Nutritionists discovered the wealth of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants hidden within cabbage's leaves. Its ability to prevent scurvy was understood. Its cancer-fighting compounds were identified. Its role in digestion was celebrated. What ancient healers and sailors had long known intuitively was now confirmed by laboratories and journals. The humble cabbage, once dismissed as peasant fare, was revealed as a powerhouse of nourishment. A reminder that wisdom often lies in simplicity. In the 20th century, cabbage traveled again, not across oceans, but across cultures and classes. During wartime, when scarcity returned, it became a symbol of endurance once more. In both world wars, it provided food for soldiers and civilians alike. In bombed cities and refugee camps, cabbage soup kept hunger at bay. In victory gardens and small plots behind houses, families planted it as an act of quiet defiance against fear. It was green hope, growing through the cracks of a broken world. And when peace returned, cabbage did not fade. It adapted, as it always had. In the kitchens of the modern age, it appeared in countless forms. Coleslaw beside fried chicken in America, braised red cabbage beside roast duck in Germany, steamed leaves cradling dumplings in China, spicy kimchi on tables across Korea. It crossed boundaries, changed flavors, and spoke every language. Each culture saw itself in cabbage, humble, strong, transformative. The 21st century brought new light to old wisdom. As people sought health, sustainability, and connection to nature, cabbage rose again, this time as a superfood. It joined the ranks of kale and spinach, celebrated not for glamour, but for truth. In an age of technology and speed, cabbage whispered the ancient lesson of patience, that the best nourishment comes slowly, from earth and care. Farmers revived heirloom varieties. Chefs rediscovered forgotten recipes. Nutritionists praised its simplicity. And once again, this ancient plant stood at the heart of human history, not as a relic, but as a guide. Look closely at a cabbage, and you see time itself. Each layer folds inward, tighter and deeper, like centuries wrapping around the core of civilization. The outer leaves bear the scars of weather and labor, the marks of the world, while the inner heart remains pale, tender, untouched. It is a living metaphor for endurance. What is soft survives by being protected. What is strong shields. What is precious. Humanity too has grown in such layers, shaped by hardship, softened by care. Across continents, cabbage carries with it the memory of human hands. Hands that planted and harvested, salted and stirred, healed and fed. In every culture it speaks a quiet language of continuity. From the monks' gardens of medieval Europe to the bustling markets of Asia, from the decks of ocean-crossing ships to the shelves of modern supermarkets, cabbage tells the same story: survival, transformation, and the eternal bond between people and the soil. Even in our modern cities, where glass towers rise and the rhythm of life quickens, cabbage remains a link to something ancient. Its scent in a kitchen recalls childhood, tradition, and belonging. Its taste, simple and earthy, grounds us, reminding us that we are still creatures of the earth, still bound to the cycles of growth and decay that have shaped all life. In a bowl of cabbage soup, in the crackle of kimchi, in the crunch of coleslaw, we taste history itself, a history that began in wild coastal winds thousands of years ago. The plant that once clung to cliffs now grows in every corner of the world. From Arctic greenhouses to African gardens, it adapts endlessly. Resilient as ever, it thrives in poor soil, in cold and heat, asking for little, giving much. It has seen empires rise and fall, witnessed revolutions, migrations, and transformations. Through it all, it remains the quiet witness to human civilization. There is something profoundly human in Cabbage's story. It is not a tale of conquest or glory, but of endurance, nourishment, and humility. It teaches that greatness is not always loud, that survival is not always triumphant, that beauty can live in simplicity. The same leaves that fed Roman soldiers and medieval monks now nourish billions across the planet. Time, culture, and science have all turned their gaze upon it. And yet it remains what it always was, a gift of the earth, shaped by human care and patience. In its journey from wild coastal weed to global staple, cabbage mirrors humanity's own path. From instinct to cultivation, from survival to meaning, its story is the story of civilization itself, unfolding leaf by leaf, generation by generation. The next time one holds a head of cabbage, smooth and cool in the hand, one holds not just a vegetable, but a fragment of human memory. The living heritage of every farmer, every traveler, every soul who ever sought sustenance in the arms of the earth. And so, the history of cabbage is not just the history of a plant. It is the history of endurance written in green. It whispers of ancient seas and monastic gardens, of hunger and healing, of voyages and homecomings. It reminds us that what sustains us most often grows in silence, that the greatest gifts come from patience, and that within every leaf of this humble vegetable lies 1,000 years of human hope, folded tenderly by time itself.